Why is it so important to you to own it when you have a military presence there, which you could expand to affect security?
Because when we own it, we defend it. Right now, we are going to do something on Greenland, whether they like it or not. We'll take over Greenland, and we're not going to have Russia or China as a neighbor. I would like to make a deal, the easy way, but if we don't do it the easy way, we're going to do it the hard way.
Welcome back to the Government Report. Have you ever wondered why the world's biggest powers are suddenly obsessed with a place buried in ice? For decades, the Arctic was ignored, but now, superpowers like the US, Russia, and China are throwing billions and building bases there like it's the next big prize. But why now? Why this frozen place? Why are we all rushing so madly? Stick around, because this isn't just about cold weather. It's about money, power, routes that could change global trade, and yeah, maybe even the next flashpoint for war. The ice is melting away. The Arctic is heating up faster than anywhere else on Earth. Not a little faster, a lot faster. Scientists say it's warming at least twice as fast as the rest of the planet. Some say 3 times. Either way, the result is the same. Ice that stayed frozen for thousands of years is disappearing in just decades. Since the 1970s, summer sea ice has dropped by around 40%. That's not a slow change. That's collapse-level change. Every summer now breaks new records. In 2025, once again, ice levels hit extreme lows. Waters that were solid and deadly not long ago are now open for weeks, sometimes months. This matters more than people realize, because ice wasn't just ice, it was protection. It was a natural wall. It made the Arctic useless for shipping, drilling, and military movement. That wall is gone, and once it started disappearing, the rules of the game changed overnight. Russia has been watching this closely. Their northern sea route, which runs along their Arctic coast, used to be almost impossible to use. Now ships are passing through regularly. Cargo traffic exploded. Over 36 million tons moved through that route last year alone. A decade ago, that number was almost nothing. Other countries noticed. Fast. The problem is, nobody ever really agreed on who owns what up there. Old Cold War treaties were vague. Some borders were never finalized. Continental shelf claims overlap, and as ice melts, those claims suddenly matter. When Trump returned to the White House in 2025, things got louder, more personal. The Arctic stopped being a quiet diplomatic issue and turned into something openly political. Greenland comments came back, NATO rhetoric sharpened, Russia reacted, China stayed calm but kept moving. Here's the scale we're talking about. The Arctic Ocean covers about 14 million square kilometers. That's bigger than Russia itself. Yet only around 7% of that area is land. Most of it is ocean, international waters, or at least waters that could be argued over. Canada, Denmark through Greenland, Norway, Russia, and the US through Alaska all hold pieces. The rest is open and melting. Climate models now say the central Arctic could be mostly ice-free in summer by the mid-2000s and 30s. That means ships moving straight across the top of the world, resources exposed, military movement is becoming easier, surveillance is becoming constant. But it's not clean progress. Storms are worse. Ice is thinner and more unpredictable. Permafrost is thawing, releasing methane and wrecking infrastructure. Indigenous communities are paying the price. Villages in Alaska are literally sinking. Reindeer herding lands in Russia are disappearing. None of that slows the rush. Because under that ice sits something more valuable than land itself. Resources that could fuel empires. Once you look at what's under the Arctic, everything starts to make sense. The U.S. Geological Survey estimated years ago that the Arctic holds around 13% of the world's undiscovered oil and nearly 30% of its undiscovered natural gas. Those numbers are still used today because nobody has proven them wrong. We're talking about roughly 412 billion barrels of oil equivalent. That's not pocket change. That's empire-level energy. Russia already leads the pack. In 2025, it was producing around 8 million barrels a day from Arctic fields alone. Projects like Yamal LNG are running full speed, shipping gas to China and Europe even under heavy sanctions. Norway continues expanding in the Barents Sea. The US still pulls oil from Prudhoe Bay in Alaska, but the real prize sits mostly untouched. Greenland, its offshore basins alone could hold around 17 billion barrels of oil. And that's just oil. Add natural gas, add minerals, add rare earth elements, the stuff modern technology depends on. Phones, electric vehicles, missiles, satellites, wind turbines, all of them need rare earths. China controls about 90% of global processing today. That gives Beijing enormous leverage. Greenland could break that monopoly. No surprise everyone wants in. Russia needs Arctic resources badly. Sanctions from the Ukraine war hurt. Energy money keeps the system running. Today, about 20% 40% of Russia's government budget is tied to Arctic oil and gas. They're building new platforms even though costs have exploded due to ice risk and weather. China stepped in when Western companies left. It poured billions into Russian projects. It financed tankers designed to cut through ice. Those ships now sail the Northern Sea route loaded with gas, headed east. The U.S., meanwhile, talks big but moves more slowly. Trump pushes Arctic drilling again. Leases reopened in 2025, but production still lags far behind Russia. Only around 500,000 barrels a day come from U.S. Arctic operations, so the roles are clear. Russia extracts. China's finances and processes. The U.S. tries to catch up while blocking China where it can, and it's not just oil and gas. As Arctic waters warm, fisheries explode. Cod, crab, stocks are worth billions every year. Countries are quietly positioning fleets and patrols. Minerals matter just as much. Nickel, cobalt, copper, critical for batteries and green energy. Greenland's rare earth deposits alone could be worth trillions long-term. In 2026, a U.S.-backed company won a major Greenland mining auction over Chinese bidders after intense lobbying. Trump called it a strategic victory. Gas hydrates, frozen methane trapped under the seabed, could one day dwarf everything else. Technology isn't there yet, but research ships are mapping it. By 2025, total Arctic energy production hit around 9 million barrels of oil equivalent per day. By 2030, that number could double if ice keeps retreating. Whoever controls those taps controls energy flow, and energy still runs the world. The world is changing. Traditional shipping routes are long. Asia to Europe through the Suez Canal takes weeks. Panama has limits. Droughts slow traffic. Political instability shuts things down fast. Arctic routes change everything. The Northern Sea Route cuts Asia-Europe travel by up to 40%. That's not a small saving. That's a week or more off each voyage. Less fuel, less cost, faster delivery. Russia knows this. That's why it treats the route like a toll road. Ships need Russian icebreaker escorts. They pay fees. They follow Russian rules. Moscow invested nearly $20 billion into Arctic ports and infrastructure to make this permanent. China jumped in early. It calls the route part of its Polar Silk Road. Icebreakers like Shuilong 2 lead research and commercial missions. In 2025 alone, Chinese ships used the route dozens of times, moving millions of tons of cargo. The Northwest Passage through Canada is also opening, though it's harder to navigate. Canada claims it as internal waters. The US says it's international. That argument hasn't gone away. Things got real after Red Sea shipping was disrupted. Costs exploded. Suddenly, Arctic routes didn't look risky. They looked smart, but danger remains. Thin ice damages hulls. Search and rescue is limited. A spill would be catastrophic. Still, projections say that by mid-century, trans-Arctic shipping could become routine. Shipping routes aren't just about trade, they're about leverage. Whoever controls the fast lane controls global commerce. Russia is building ports. China is building ships. The US is scrambling to upgrade Alaska's infrastructure. NATO is watching every buoy and lighthouse. This isn't neutral development. These are economic highways with military consequences. For Russia, the Arctic isn't a future project. It's already core territory. Russia controls over half the Arctic coastline. It claims extended continental shelf rights reaching deep into the ocean, including the Lomonosov Ridge. It has reopened more than 50 Soviet-era bases since 2014. Some of these bases look like science fiction. Arctic trefoil, northern clover, fully insulated military cities, runways, radar, missile systems. Troops are stationed year-round in brutal conditions. After the Ukraine war escalated, Russia restricted foreign movement in parts of the Arctic and increased patrols. Hypersonic missile tests were conducted over northern waters. Russia frames all this as defensive. NATO sees it differently. The Arctic is now Russia's economic lifeline. Energy exports flow north and east. Undersea cables route data through Arctic paths. Moscow knows control here means resilience against Western pressure. The result is what analysts call an ice curtain, a fortified northern shield. Locals benefit from jobs but suffer pollution. Mining expands, gas flares burn, the economy grows, but so does tension. China's northern push. China has no Arctic coastline. That hasn't stopped it. Beijing calls itself a near-Arctic state. It gained observer status in the Arctic Council in 2013. In 2018, it released a strategy paper laying out its Arctic ambitions. Research first, investment second, security quietly in the background. China runs research stations in Svalbard. It sends icebreakers on regular missions. It invests in Russian projects and Arctic infrastructure. Its approach is patient. It avoids loud military posturing. But make no mistake, these are dual-use operations. Research today, logistics tomorrow. China wants energy security. It wants rare earths. It wants shipping routes that bypass choke points controlled by rivals. Sanctions on Russia helped. Beijing filled financial gaps. Joint exercises followed. Coast Guard cooperation expanded. The West watches carefully. Deals get blocked. Greenland mining bids face scrutiny. NATO keeps tabs. China doesn't rush. It doesn't need to. America, under Trump, The US ignored the Arctic for decades. Post-Cold War, icebreakers rusted, Greenland barely mattered, Alaska got attention mostly for oil. The Arctic felt distant, cold, and expensive. In short, inconvenient. Then Russia started moving, bases reopened, submarines patrolled, missiles tested. China quietly invested in Arctic infrastructure and Yamal LNG. The Pentagon started whispering Arctic security at meetings that had focused on the Middle East or South China Sea. Trump's return in 2025 changed everything. Greenland headlines came back. Rare earth minerals, energy, shipping routes, suddenly strategic. Trump called Greenland a strategic asset against rivals. Icebreakers were planned, Alaska bases upgraded, and Arctic-ready troops deployed. Patuxent and Greenland gained focus. Bering Sea patrols increased. The U.S. still lags. Russia has 40 icebreakers. The U.S. has 2 heavy ones and 1 medium. Satellites help, but you can't patrol millions of square kilometers of ice from space alone. ANWR drilling resumes. Rare earth projects move cautiously. Indigenous voices, environmental rules, and budget fights complicate action. The Arctic is no longer a curiosity, it's a chessboard. Every icebreaker, base, and patrol is a move against rivals already in position. NATO and allies entering. NATO historically focused on Europe and the Atlantic. The Arctic, mostly Canada, Norway, Denmark, Iceland, US. After 2022, Sweden and Finland joined. Arctic security became an alliance issue. By 2026, NATO exercises will increase. Patrols in the Barents Sea, near Greenland, along the GIUK gap became routine. Intelligence sharing, satellite coverage, Arctic-specific command structures, all expanded. Canada patrolled the Northwest Passage. Norway beefed up Svalbard. Finland and Sweden contributed troops. The UK, Estonia, and Poland voiced interest. NATO's goal: prevent Russia or China from dominating unopposed. But cooperation with Russia has frayed. The Arctic Council weakened after Russia's suspension. Bilateral deals replaced multilateral frameworks. The Arctic is no longer calm. Exercises, patrols, and alliances all aim to deter rivals while signaling presence. Flashpoints, ready to ignite. Greenland, Svalbard, Lomonosov Ridge, Northern Sea Route fees, each a potential spark. Trump wants Greenland. China eyes rare earths. Russia asserts claims. Treaties fray. Submarines patrol. Survey ships map disputed areas. Shipping routes are risky. Russia charges fees. Canada claims passage rights. NATO pushes for international access. One accident, a collision, a spill, could escalate into a political crisis. Energy development adds risk. Harsh conditions mean a single oil spill or accident can create chaos. Essentially, the Arctic is a frozen tinderbox. Ice may be melting, but tensions are solid. By 2030, expect mega traffic on Arctic shipping routes. Resources will flow. Militaries will dig deeper. Icebreakers, ports, lighthouses, and hypersonic missiles will spread across the north. Whoever controls access controls leverage over global trade and energy. Climate change accelerates the rush. Ice melts faster than law or infrastructure can adapt. Storms worsen. Permafrost collapses. Indigenous communities move. Methane releases rise. Superpowers push ahead anyway. Energy and minerals remain central. Fossil fuels from the Arctic may power the green transition elsewhere. Rare earths feed green tech. Irony: Arctic fuels both fossil dependence and renewable growth. Indigenous voices grow louder, environmental risks rise, and diplomacy struggles. Arctic Council revival seems unlikely in the near term. Superpowers may carve spheres of influence, reminiscent of Cold War zones. By 2026, the Arctic is already heating. NATO strategy ramps up. Trump pushes Greenland. China multiplies missions. Russia drills and militarizes deeper. Ice is still there, but politically, economically, and militarily, the Arctic has melted. Trade, energy, minerals, and geopolitics all converge here. The freeze is thawing. The fire is already starting. So what do you think? Will the Arctic become the next big battleground or a place for global cooperation? Comment below and let us know.